I didn't really understand at that point of time until I was actually penetrated. I wasn't even able to understand what was happening at that point of time. I didn't know what child sexual abuse was. What I knew was that I was experiencing pain, a lot of pain.
Yeah, just break it down, take your time, tell it everything. Yeah? Okay. And whatever makes you comfortable. Okay. Yeah? Alright. Okay. This is your story. So tell what you want people to know about you.
Now, sexual abuse has many definitions, but penetration seems to be the primary definition of sexual abuse. But that doesn't mean that if penetration hasn't happened, the child has not been abused.
So how were you as a child?
Uh, I was very Dhinchak, I will say. I was very joyful.
I think I would, more than anything, I think I was a kid who would trust a lot of people without a second doubt. And I had a very beautiful view towards the world where I had my own little fantasies, getaways. And now come to think about it, that stopped. It stopped after the first incident.
So I was 5 at this point of time. We had this place called the Nature's Park. So this Nature's Park was actually a forest area converted into a park. And most kids went up there, hanged out there. But then I used to go towards the cage where there used to be these rabbits and guinea pigs. I think, after the rabbits for a very long time trying to hold them, catch them, and it wasn't happening. I was a little frustrated also. And there came this guy, and he caught a rabbit, and he gave that to me. And he was the best person at that point of time for me. He told me that I'll show you something on the other side of the nature's park. And I didn't really understand or realize. And I accompanied him. He started talking to me, and it started very innocently, like, okay, uncle ko kiss uncle on the cheek, or kya khaya hai. That's how he started to undress me. Uh, I didn't really understand at that point of time until I was actually penetrated. I wasn't even able to understand what was happening at that point of time. I didn't know what child sexual abuse was. What I knew was that I was experiencing pain, a lot of pain. And I told him, nahi, mujhe jana hai, I want to go, and he didn't listen. He just held my face and he raped me. That was the first time that it happened. This continued for 2 years, and I heard a lot in these stories. Things like, my parents are not going to believe me, they're not going to trust me. If I tell anybody, I am going to become my parents' biggest disgrace. When I thought that I should tell this to my parents, this person threatened me at that point of time. He told me there was this well in the park, and he told me that he's going to throw me in the well. I often bled also from my anal region. And I remember once walking to my house. It was around 700 to 800 meters from this place. And I remember walking back to my house and going into the washroom, and I was bleeding. My underwear was completely wet in blood. And I remember I couldn't wash it. I couldn't do anything about it. So I just threw it because I didn't want my mother to know. I thought that if she came to know, she would probably not understand or hit me because I thought it was my fault. I thought that I have done something wrong. I really became numb. Uh, I don't know what was happening, but I remember walking there all the time, uh, thinking that today I shouldn't go back home bleeding because I can't throw another underwear. I even told my perpetrator this. I told him that please don't do it this way. I start bleeding. I don't even remember his name. I don't even remember him ever telling me his name. Uh, all I remember is this uncle who did something horrible to me.
There is a huge misconception amongst parents and a lot of the adults that the predators, the abusers are mostly strangers. So we do teach our kids about stranger danger. But if you look at the statistics, 95% and above of the abusing cases are from people you know very closely. And the main reason that's so is because the main reason is access. It's people who know you closely have access to you, and strangers don't have as much access, which is why you find that the abusing population is primarily people who you know very closely. We really need to empower our kids with what to do when it's somebody you know, because then it gets harder to actually do something about it, to speak up about it, to even recognize it, because it's someone you trust, implicitly trust. It's someone not only you trust, it's your parents who are trusting them. The largest abusing age group, over 40%, is under 20, which means those are the ones who have maximum access. It could be a much older sibling or siblings' friends. Kids go to school, there are older kids there all the time. There is something called grooming, which the perpetrators do, even though they're known to you, well known to you. For them to have continued access to your family, they have to groom you as a parent, they have to groom the child, which means they help you to drop your guard down. They prepare you, they make you trust them. And thereafter, every action they do, you are going to look at it blindly. You will trust them, the child trusts them.
Around the age of 8, we had a house help. The guy was around 19, 20 years old. He used to stay at our house. There was a big chunk of time where I would be alone at home. He would give me food and all, and then slowly the touch started, which initially was maybe, keeping his hand on my shoulder for too long. I don't know how it escalated, but the next memory I have is of him stripping me off and him lying naked next to me, and then him telling me that I care for you and I want to show you what it means when people love each other. मैं तुम्हारे लिए बहुत केयर करता हूँ, एंड जब बड़े लोग एक दूसरे का ऐसा केयर करते तो वो अलग तरीके से दिखाते हैं, तो मैं आज तुम्हें दिखाता हूँ और उसको प्यार कहते हैं. And I had no idea what's going to happen next. The next thing I know is I'm flipped over. He's like, palto, piche palto. And that was the first time I got raped. And I kept saying, nahi, ye galat hai. Ke ruko, please ruko. And because the pain was too much. And he shouted and he told ke, nahi, yahi pyar hota hai. I love you. And after that incident, he started becoming more aggressive. At one point, I did tell him that, I'll tell my parents what you're doing to me. He held me, he threw me on the floor, and then with his foot, he kicked me on my crotch. And the pain was too much. And he told me that if you tell them, I'll do 10 times worse than this.
So, bribing a child with what she or he wants in exchange for a sexual favor is called as grooming. But sometimes they are not bribed, they are threatened. If you do so, I will, do this to your father, or I'll do this to your brother, or I'll kill this one or kill that one. And children in their world get scared because they are defenseless and small, and they think that maybe they can do this to their parents, or they can do this to their family, and they get scared. And inducing fear is also one form of grooming. Children get scared of that person. So that may also be. And they may threaten saying, don't talk. It's our little secret. Don't talk about this secret. It's our little secret.
I became very silent. According to the aunties, I was the perfect child because I didn't really do a lot of halla gulla. I was just sitting at one place, quiet. That was something which was good, but when you look at it from my angle, it was one of the worst things ever. Because my silence wasn't because I was like happy or I was well behaved. It was because of the reason that I was suffering, and suffering in ways which people couldn't even understand. I didn't even have a voice then. I think I lost my voice then. The impact of being abused is one, and what you face outside after that is another thing which adds on to it. I remember going to school and I often crapped my pants, and the teachers were ridiculing it, probably telling me that I do not come to school and it's not correct, never asking why it was happening. I never could go to an adult and even say that I want to go to the washroom. I was so afraid of going to an adult at that point of time. I always blamed myself for it. I thought that it was my fault. I had done something wrong. I was wrong, some way.
Usually very belligerent, outgoing, aggressive child suddenly becomes quiet, withdrawn, then that's something you need to wonder about. And the opposite is also true. If a child who's generally very reserved, shy, suddenly starts acting up, becomes aggressive, becomes violent towards the others, then they need to wonder what's going on. Being fearful of strangers, being fearful of particular people, being fearful of social situations, not wanting to go out. Their behavior towards their peers changes, starting, having nightmares, bedwetting. And a number one thing, especially in the younger age group, is when they start doing sexual role play between their toys. Kids love to play with stuffed toys, with animals, with cars, and they're doing role playing all the time. And it gives us a lot of insight. If we were to watch and see what they're playing with, what stories they're bringing out, it gives us an insight into what's going on to the child's world. Because every story, it's not created in their mind. It's something that they have seen or experienced or witnessed, which is now being enacted.
Basically, abuse is a traumatic experience. So, post-traumatically, children can have what we call as acute stress disorder. That means children will get frightened, and they non-specifically, they refuse to be alone, and they'll go on asking for parental figure or a caregiver to be with them constantly. A clingy behavior might be seen. Sleep-wake cycle will be disturbed, and excretory functions like they might pass urine in the bed. The child who had already gained toilet control might start wetting the bed, or they may refuse to go to toilet in case of boys, and they may refuse to let anyone touch their private parts, including the mother, and they become very hesitant to let anybody come anywhere close to them. They feel, I am guilty, I am to be blamed for what happened, I am worthless, that's why I was treated this way. most victims of abuse may develop depression. Panic attacks and anxiety disorders are very common.
I started observing that I started having time lapses where I had zero recollection as to what happened. Like initially it was maybe half an hour, 45 minutes, and I would shrug it off thinking that maybe I have too much work. One night I remember I woke up howling and screaming with tears in my eyes, and that was the first time I realized that there's something really, really amiss. Because when I woke up, I had a searing pain near my private parts, and I realized that there's something wrong. That this is not normal. As per my roommate, he started telling me that you started speaking in your sleep, and sometimes he told me while I was speaking that my entire body would start moving as if I'm trying to run away or hide, and then I slowly noticed that I started losing interest in work, and I started feeling that there's something wrong, that there's something happening that I'm not able to handle, but I had no idea what that was. And that's when I actually went to seek medical help, and I realized that I am in depression. Why? I'm not sure. And during this therapy is when my therapist started telling me that maybe the dreams that you're seeing are basically repressed memories. This is also where I think my struggle also becomes a bit different, because I remembered all of this at the age of 25. And sometimes I curse the fact that I remembered all of this, because even in office, there are times when I feel, it's a wonderful day, things are going to happen very nicely, and I just lose the energy like this at a drop of a hat, and I'm like, I don't want to work. I don't want to work. I don't want to do anything. I just want to sit in one corner, huddle up, and just cry my eyes out, because I think the child inside me is dying to express the pain, and the adult in me is fighting it off.
So, what happens is if the experiences have been very negative, very severe in their childhood, the brain tends to fragment and suppress the memories. And that's probably like the coping mechanism for a lot of the children. But it doesn't stay suppressed forever. There will be triggers later on in your life, and you will go through this process of remembering. Now, if you don't get the right help at that time, the correct stages after remembering is you need to go through a mourning phase, and then you go through healing. Now, if you don't get the help and support through all of this, it's in the remembering where we lose the human being itself. They get involved in addictions, they start getting towards crime, they start maybe becoming abusive themselves, even suicide.
The child will start developing an obsessive doubt. Did it really happen or not? Did I make it up? Was it all my imagination? Was it really true? Every person who has been through abuse will never ever trust anyone completely. Trust is the first casualty in this war. And these are all what you call abstract things, which actually make human life worth living, but which are all taken away by an abusive experience. And people don't realize it, they don't talk about it. So I think that taking psychiatric help, trauma-focused psychotherapy, and getting the right counselor who knows how to handle trauma. See, many doctors know to identify child sexual abuse, but they do not know how to treat it psychologically. In India, they really don't know.
I had this cousin. He and I have more than a decade of age gap. And one night I woke up and I realized that someone is on me. And he was forcing a kiss on me. And I have no idea what's going on. And next thing I realized is his tongue is in my mouth and his hands are all over my body, groping me. And he would do that every time he would come over. And that screwed me up big time. I thought that this is how brothers show love. He didn't even have to tell me this. It's how I automatically processed it. And I would, if my other cousins who were elder to me, if they wouldn't do that to me, thankfully they didn't do that to me, I would get distant from them. I would like, maybe they don't like me because they aren't doing this to me. The fundamentals of a relationship were destroyed then and there in that act. And it became so common for me to expect this from him, that if I would see him and if he wouldn't do that to me, he wouldn't show his love to me, I would be like, भैया मेरे से कुछ गलत हो गया क्या आज? आप don't you love me anymore? Last time आप आए थे तो आपने you did. It's crazy. It's crazy that as a kid I don't know, he didn't even have to try it. It's like my brain washed itself automatically. And I don't even know how to begin to explain that. And I'm so lucky that none of my other brothers did that, or I tried to, somehow do that to them, stating that, this is how we do things. This is because I care for you. This is how I'm showing it. And
all sexual acts do not begin with sex. They begin with non-sexual fondling of a sort. And the non-sexual fondling can be liked by a child. But when the fondling moves on to a more intrusive or a more sexual arena, the child will resist. After the POCSO Act came out, Protection of Children Against Sexual Offences Act of 2012, we are seeing a lot of abusers being brought to justice in terms of who were strangers. But for me, that is the tip of the iceberg. The real abusers are relatives who are very much respected and loved by the family. And the family will never ever expose them, because the unity of the family, the very existence of the family will be destroyed if they were to bring it to the notice. Women are not willing to give up their husbands even if the daughter is the victim, because the woman is more interested in keeping her marriage and her social status than in looking at what happened to her child. Stranger abuse is all that is coming out. The familial abuse, which is the large part of abuse, is not at all coming out anywhere. It's not getting reported. Very rare. Even few cases which got reported were stepfather-daughter abuse. Biological father-daughter abuse is also happening. And where biological brother has abused the daughter, mother has sided the brother, not the sister.
Today, the reason why we are not able to address this the way we should be addressing is because, one, parents are not aware of how to deal with these issues. If there is a case of child sexual abuse within the family, with their child or with anyone else, they don't know how to deal with it. And the lack of knowledge in this prevents them from going and addressing the issue in a way where it will get justice, Just educating children is not going to help, because God forbid if a child is in a situation where they are abused and they go to a parent, and the parent, instead of understanding the problem, is retaliating with disbelief or with anger or with humiliation to the child, there you have shut down all doors. You have been wrong, you must have done something. I think that is really sad, because one, you are never going to have that child come back to you. The child is going to lose faith in you. And then when things get really bad, you are not in a position to handle it.
An abuser, in my mind, will always win the trust of your parent or a parent figure. Then enter your life, then the actual abuse happens.
It was in class 9th when I came across the biology and I understood what happens. That is when I actually understood what had happened to me. And I had words to it. But that is when I actually went into denial. I went into denial because of the reason that it was questioning my existence, my identity at that point of time. I was horrified. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to tell my parents. I also wanted people somehow to find out that this is happening to me. A part of me always wanted that. But another part of me always believed that if people did find this out, they would treat me differently. They wouldn't treat me the way they treated me right now. I wouldn't be a good person anymore. What I'm trying to do is find my voice. And that happened when I actually broke silence. So, first, I did it with my parents. So, I did blame them. And I did want them to learn something. But that didn't really help. I knew that they are humans too. They are going to also probably experience various things I have also experienced in my life before. I'm glad that they gave me a very patient ear and they heard me.
Children don't talk about it because they are not taught what is abuse. They don't have the terminology also to describe their private parts. They're most often told that it is shame to talk about it or to expose it or to word it. So they don't know to even verbalize those body parts. And they don't know how to verbalize the action also, how to call it, what to call it. Most of the victims come out with their stories after they attain puberty, because then they realize, okay, this was sexual. Many times they come out with the story after they have a first boyfriend, because then they realize, okay, this is something a boyfriend should have done, not this uncle or not this brother or not this, person. You brought it upon yourself. Victim blaming, victim shaming. These are two other reasons why people will not talk about abuse. Victim is a very small part of the identity, depending upon the resilience and capacity of the child. So, victim blaming, saying you must have done something to bring it upon yourself, is very, very common with girls. Very often, children feel that if they talk about abuse, then they are bringing shame to their family, bringing shame to their own identity in a way.
In our society, the typical reaction is just hush it down, don't talk about it. And, this is going to cause great embarrassment. But my point is, who is this an embarrassment for? Is it an embarrassment for the victim? It should be embarrassing for the perpetrator. So why are we protecting them? If somebody else comes and complains to you about your child, you immediately turn around and ask your child. You believe the adult, you don't believe the child. So these are the ways you set up, the foundation for your child losing faith in you. They don't have faith in your support anymore. So they know that it's happened at the hand of a trusted adult. The parent trusts that adult. So obviously it's my word against that adult, and my parent always believes an adult, not me. 80% of the abuse never gets reported at all, at least not in the first 5 years. And even after that, it's only about 30% of the cases that ever come out. Most of the cases never get reported at all. Never. When I say reported, I mean they don't even come and tell their parents or any trusted adult. It just dies out with them. It lives with them.
When I spoke to fellow survivors, whether it was my husband or anyone else, it was this feeling of being alone, in this, of not having anyone to go to when you needed someone as a supporter, or feeling that you are probably the only one. There is no one else out there who has been sexually abused, And there is this term called pluralistic ignorance that we use. And what it means is that you and I both might be sexually abused, but we'll never talk about it. So because we don't talk about it, we think it has not happened. But the minute we start talking about it, we realize, and then it's like a, domino effect. Two people talking to 4 people, you realize that 3 out of those 6 have been sexually abused. And it creates that kind of effect. I wanted that to happen. I wanted all of us to be, not ashamed of what has happened to us.
So Bola is a support group of adult survivors of child sexual abuse. We started it off in March 2017. Rucha and I, we were colleagues back then, and we shared this story wherein I said I'm a survivor, and I realized what I was dealing with, and it has had an impact. And her response was, "I'm a survivor too," and I had no idea. So we started having a conversation about it, and there was an end of isolation somewhere in that conversation, that I was not alone in this journey. And then we had more people on board. We found comfort, something we had never spoken about to other people before, something we never thought would be accepted or even okay. It was okay here. And we spoke to more people who were around in the network, and we realized there were a lot more survivors. And that is how we started talking to people. And one day we just said that we want to start a support group of survivors.
The concept of survivor was actually introduced to me by Bola. Seeing someone talk about it or hearing someone made a lot of difference, because I think that was a step towards coming out of my own denial and silence. That this is happening. Like, it's not that I'm only alone going through it, but there are others as well. I saw something very similar. We all were living with a guilt, we were living with a lot of shame, which was not ours to live with.
The beauty of finding somebody who's been through a similar journey is that moment when you start saying, hey, that sounds like my journey too. I've been here and it sounds familiar, and maybe I'm not the only one. And I think that's the moment when you break the power relationship with your abuse and you take on your own power, because now you are in charge of your journey, and that's the road from being a victim to a survivor.
So Bola really stands for breaking the silence around child sexual abuse, wherein people break their silence of that shame, guilt, and everything else that they have carried on from that moment. We do hope that this also gets carried forward to other cities, villages, towns across the country. Your abuser is as strong as your silence. You break it, that abusive pattern and its impact will also break.
Some people do feel even today that girls are the ones who are being abused and boys are not at risk. But statistics have shown that girls and boys are just as vulnerable. In fact, 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys will statistically be abused, sexually abused by the age of 16. It's a pretty damning statistic, and it shows us that boys are just as vulnerable than girls. So they are being abused.
Not a lot of boys speak up. Most of them suffer in silence. One, because of that the society continuously keeps on telling you you're supposed to be stronger. You're not supposed to feel pain. You're not supposed to be crying. You're not supposed to cry. Because men don't cry, that's what people say. I wanted to break the stigma that it doesn't happen to men. We are living in denial. Like, I know that so many of them question me that how can a guy be raped? How is that possible?
Society at large thinks that the superiority of male gender has to do with a physical construct. Therefore, they do not accept the victimization can happen to a boy. And they often dismiss it, saying, okay, he's a boy, he'll get over it.
There is the general idea that most of the abusers are men. It's the male population who's doing all the abusing, whether it's towards children or towards adults. But that's actually not true. You find women also in abusive situations, even sexually abusive situations towards children. Now, if you were to compare it, the proportion, the ratio is not that much. Women are doing it lesser as compared to men, but women are not excluded. They are also just as responsible. In fact, it's very difficult to say who is excluded from it, because it has nothing to do with your gender, nothing to do with your orientation, your socio-economic background, your educational background, your age group. Pretty much any and everybody could be an abuser. It depends on what's going on, what's the mental makeup like. So to say that my child is safe from this particular type of people, or my child doesn't engage with those kind of people, so therefore my child is safe, it's actually putting a child at greater risk. You have to be vigilant at all times, and you have to do your homework, your legwork, before you allow people to engage with your children.
We don't really, in India, educate or talk about sex. Sex is a taboo, big time taboo. I think one of the reasons that this is happening is because we don't talk. We don't educate our children about it. We don't talk to them. We treat it as something very unhealthy, something which is dirty, you know. And when you realize that something like this has happened to you, you associate that thing that society calls dirty as yourself. Why so many parents are aware that this is happening to their children and yet choose to do nothing? Why? What we don't realize is a child is losing his childhood, his innocence. Sometimes it hurts to what happened to you, but it hurts even more when nobody understands or acknowledges or does something about it.
Like I hear a lot of people saying that, oh, this is happening today, you know. No, it's not happening today. We are just hearing about it today because of the media reporting it. But it's been on. I've met people who are 65 and 68 today who have come and told me that they have been sexually abused as children. Even reporting for that matter. You'll always see very big headlines, you know, that 3-year-old was raped. How about saying a 70-year-old man raped a 3-year-old? Right? Just shift the narrative for once. Give more details about the one who has done the crime, not the one who has gone through this criminal act.
The number one thing you can do is to empower your children with the knowledge about body safety practices, good touch, bad touch, which includes good secrets, bad secrets, who is a trusted adult, what is yours, your body belongs to you, the power of no. All of these things have to be spoken with the child from a very early age. You keep it age appropriate, but you start very, very early. People always ask me, what is the age when you start talking about them? So the advice is that, 0 to 3, there are certain things you talk about. 3 to 5, 5 to 8, 8 to 12, and the conversation keeps deepening. Idea is never to scare the child. The idea is to empower the child. See, we live in a society where we promote the use of nicknames for private body parts. We don't call the private body parts with their actual names. And what message we send to our kids by doing that is that it's okay to use nicknames for private body parts. So the abusers start using their own nicknames. Now, even if your child wants to come and tell you something, you're not going to get it, because that nickname is going to be something so benign, something that, it's a daily use item. You're not going to understand what's going on. Therefore, it's very important for us to not promote the use of nicknames for private body parts. So primarily the child may not have had the vocabulary to express what has happened. And secondly, the child may start feeling a gamut of different negative emotions. Things like, nobody's going to believe me, or I will be held responsible. Nobody's going to love me anymore, or I will get shouted at for it. Where do all of these things come from? These come from very strict parenting, when the relationship between the parent and child has not been a healthy one from the beginning. If we have always been telling our kids, always been correcting them, always been pointing out their flaws, whenever they came and talked to us about something they did wrong, if we immediately jumped to pointing out their flaws about it, they are going to not feel safe and comfortable to tell you if something happens. They're not going to feel supported. They're not going to feel believed and loved.
And also many of them choose to do nothing because they feel that they can't do anything about it. You can. You can tell your story. You can break the silence. You can end the isolation. Silence is the perpetrator's best friend. Okay. And the only way to actually stop this is by breaking the silence.
Do you have closure from your incident?
I'm no more a victim. I'm no more a victim at all. And I do not live my life anymore by what my perpetrator did to me.
I would call upon people who have been through abuse, even if they are not interested in bringing the abuser to justice, to come and seek help, because the injury to the mind is invisible. And without seeking help, you can develop all sorts of misconceptions about yourself, about the world, about sexuality when you were not handled at the right time. If it was handled at the right time and normalization happened, and you were told that the person who did this to you was wrong, and it was not you who was wrong, and this is the very strong message that a child needs to get at that age.
You cannot live in isolation all the time. You cannot live thinking that there's no one out there who's there to listen to you. You need to have that belief that as long as you're alive, you can always change your narrative. This happened to me, but this is not who I am. We are not byproducts of our child sexual abuse today. What happened to us is today just a story. We can create more stories out of what happened to us.
It requires a lot of courage to come out and talk about it, come out and get healing for yourself, therapy for yourself, but you must do it. You must do it for the sake of the inner child in you and for the sake of the kids around you. Nobody can help a child who's been abused better than someone who's been through the abuse themselves.